as a kind of a structure or a loose structure, my plan was to just take you through a quick slide deck. It's essentially the slide deck we typically take people who come to Gearset to evaluate the tool through. So I'll take you through that slide deck, and then I'll take you through a demonstration of Gearset. I was going to deploy from one org to another org. If there's time, I can look at some of the other features of Gearset as well. Is that okay? Or is there more specific things you want to ensure we covered at the time we have today?
It should be fine.
Wonderful.
Obviously, I've got an affinity to know how the governance can be done through the Gearset. Yeah, if you get to that, that's great.
So with that, you mean kind of how do you put in stage gates and saying,
yeah, so stage gates, yeah, sort of managing the environments, making sure that you're avoiding conflicts, things like that.
Okay, I can touch towards those. I won't be able to go into so much detail just because it does look slightly different for each team. And the reality is, as we'll go through this, Gearset's a very flexible tool. So we don't say, there you go, work in this way. So a lot of that can kind of happen with a mix of things. So a mix of kind of how you tie down access to your Salesforce environments, access to Gearset, access to source control, access to Jira, things like that, and kind of meaning things have to happen. So there's usually a bit of a wider conversation around that, but hopefully as I kind of go through a normal simplistic route, you hopefully can be able to see where things pick up. Of course, we can take a conversation elsewhere if you want a more specific one on how we can actually set up a SOX compliance workflow or something like that. Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can we all see DevOps with Gearset?
I can see it.
Perfect. So as said, this would usually be somewhat tailored to the audience at hand in terms of a lot of mine are with customers, but I'm going to kind of keep this somewhat generic for the audience we have here. But it's only about 4 or 5 slides. It just gives you a bit of a flavor of what Gearset is and where we come from. So that's the agenda. I'm going to give you a background on Gearset, how we as a tool go about solving the DevOps problem, and a solution run through where I was going to spend the majority of the time this afternoon or morning, based on where you are in the world. Who's Gearset? We founded in 2015 with a deep DevOps expertise. So we span out of another DevOps software company called Redgate. So we already came from an area of deep expertise within DevOps, kind of DevOps first, Salesforce somewhat second. And internally, the engineers who had to work on their own Salesforce environment were frustrated with the kind of lack of robust DevOps tooling on the Salesforce platform natively. As a business, we're headquartered in Cambridge in the UK. We do have an office over in Chicago, and we're doubling headcount year on year in both of those. And that doubling is coming through our customer base. So we're not VC backed, we've not had a lot of cash thrown at us. We're just a profitable business with a lot of customers who love using the tool and love to continue to use that tool. The split of those customers are kind of the entire ecosystem. Around 600 are kind of sitting in mid-market / enterprise segments, right down to individual consultants who may pick us up for projects here or there and everything in between. The overall mission of Gearset is to make the full DevOps cycle ingeniously simple on the Salesforce platform. So what that means is anything that we can find that would fit under a use case that comes under DevOps, specifically for Salesforce, that's what we're trying to build out. So our focus is purely Salesforce. Here's our main logo board, if you want. As I said, we do work with individual consultants and everything in between, but it's always nice to kind of show some of the bigger logos we work with, the likes of Disney, Facebook, Coca-Cola, and of course, Salesforce themselves. There's some of our partners we work with as well. Traction Demand are big users of Gearset, who I believe were just recently acquired by Salesforce. And kind of from a consulting standpoint, we have quite a lot of partners and a lot of customers who work on the consulting side. So how do we go about solving the DevOps problem? And I guess, how do we try and set ourselves apart from the wider market? This slide here is where we usually discuss and talk through what the problem is with a particular customer, because everybody has slightly different starting points. Maybe they've come from just a change sets development process and they're kind of getting bogged down with maybe potentially manual processes. Maybe they just creating bottlenecks in the team, a lack of expertise, and so on and so forth. Or maybe they already have a CI/CD process in place. It's not bespoke to Salesforce and perhaps can't handle the nuances of moving Salesforce metadata from environment to environment. Wherever they're starting from, we can kind of discuss that. And quite often, the way we built Gearset allows us to answer those problems in a slightly different way, depending on the use cases. So we kind of, if we're drilling down Gearset and what we try to achieve with it in 4 bullet points, the first one would be, we want to build a tool that would fit easily into an existing or future workflow. So what that's alluding to is we don't prescribe a way of working. Customers don't come to them and say, you have to work like this. We very much work with you, and it's the best practices for you could look different depending on your org structure, your team structure, your expertise within the team, but it also could look different in 6 months, and it could look different again within 12 months. Your team might be doubling, it may change, your DevOps process can mature, and Gearset can grow with you. Gearset is non-native to Salesforce. We'll kind of get into that later. That's very much by design. And one of the benefits that affords us is the ability to get up and running in a couple of hours. There's nothing to install in any of your Salesforce orgs, so implementation is super quick. We have complete control of our UI, so people can kind of get up and moving with Gearset relatively quickly. We put a lot of investment, and we're very proud of our support team. So our support team is in-house, sat in the same office that I am today. We also have an office in Chicago and a team sat out there as well. So at any point, if you're on the Gearset website or the Gearset app, there's a little orange blob. Open that blob and chat to one of our team. You'll be talking straight away with a real person. There's no bot. We don't have first line, second line. We just train that team to be able to help you with your problem. And the average response time is below 3 minutes. So those guys are really, really useful whenever you're stuck in the app or you have an ad hoc problem. And finally, we want to give you everything that you need within a single tool. What that looks like. So today I'm going to predominantly looking at metadata CI/CD, kind of the DevOps workflow is how we envision it. But a part of that is also the ability to monitor orgs, run automated unit testing. Yes, it also has a data backup, incident response, and disaster recovery arm of the tool. We got very good at deploying metadata from A to B. We then got very good at moving data from A to B. So it kind of makes sense to then pull that together and build a backup tool that already has a very powerful restore engine within it. And the final piece there is the data config and data migration. Primary use case there could be moving production data to lower environments and masking that data for useful testing, but it also allows us to move CPQ data up through the environments and Velocity or Salesforce Industries as well, quite thoroughly and quite granularly from one environment to another as part of a development process. So as mentioned earlier, we're trying to pull as many DevOps processes as we possibly can, specific to Salesforce. That's me on the slides. I'm going to jump into a demo. Before I do, any questions on anything I just presented? I can take silence as a no. Wonderful.
Not seeing anything through the chat either.
Perfect. So I'll go across to the Gearset website. So as mentioned, Gearset is non-native, so the app is accessed through our website. I guess for you guys, if you're ever working with clients or you kind of want to show anybody, our trial is completely self-serve. We're very proud of the tool. We have a lot of confidence in it, so we allow people to sign up for a free trial on their own. It's worth noting the trial isn't lightweight. The trial is exactly the same as the paid for version. First thing you do is come in, you choose your data center. There's no difference in terms of security or performance. It's purely if you have a requirement or a strong want for data residency. Choose your data location. Choose how you'd like to log in. Logins via OAuth, so we don't store your credentials. Most people would just use their Salesforce production credentials, log in, and then your Gearset account is created. I, of course, have account, so I'm just going to go straight ahead and log in. We use G Suite, so I'm going to log in with my Google credentials there. First time you come into the app, there is a setup wizard. I'm going to assume you ignored it. Just to quickly show you how you'd set things up. So down the left-hand side, we have the navigation pane. I'm going to spend the majority of time today at the metadata deployments. We also have the automation suite, where we're able to build up simple or potentially quite complex CI/CD processes. Data deployment, that's the way you move data from one environment to the other. Data backup, and the My Connections. So My Connections is where you connect to your Salesforce orgs and your source control and your Jira. Super simple how you do it. Just type in your username, click on what type of organization that is, hit authorize, that'll spin you out to Salesforce, allow Gearset access, and then you're good to go. Super quick. There's a few other things here. So Sam, you mentioned around kind of compliance. So this is where we'll be able to delegate access and give people potentially access to compare, validate, and deploy. So a use case there could be, I want this individual to be able to see my production environment, but I don't want them to ever be able to deploy into it. Or I want them to be able to validate up against production, but again, they cannot deploy. Again, there's many ways we can kind of build that process in. Source control and services. So we connect with all the major providers straight out of the box. You can also connect to custom Git repos. Super simple process, just follow the hyperlink and it'll take you through. Once you're connected, you're then ready to go and use the tool. So where you possibly spend the majority of your time within Gearset would be the screen here. I'll get into Automation Suite in a minute, but essentially once automation is set up, it's kind of set up. So what we do here is just move metadata from one environment to the other. Before we do that though, we show you a comparison of the two environments to see what's different, what's really going on between the two environments. The first thing you notice is there's different options of where your source location can be and of where your target location can be. So we integrate and we work very well with source control, scratch orgs, and the UI on Gearset doesn't really change. So kind of if you look at expertise across a team, you don't necessarily need to understand or really care too much about the underlying branching model, or kind of if you're using spin up scratch orgs and things like that, we kind of built it into the UI. So it's super simple. If you go from an org to org development process, and then you want to push into a feature branch instead, the learning curve is very minimal. For example, if I click source control there, I just choose what repo I need, and I can create a feature branch right from the Gearset UI. Similarly, scratch orgs, if I've got a DevHub set up, I can just create a scratch org straight from within Gearset UI and push my changes to there. What I'm going to do today, though, I'm just going to push from a dev environment to a staging environment. I've been making some changes in my dev environment, and I'll push them through to staging. But as mentioned, the UI will look and feel the same regardless of what my source or target location are. Before I do compare the two, I need to tell Gearset what I want to see. So again, users of the tool get quite familiar quite quickly with our metadata comparison filter. We have some quite good defaults. So the default comparison 63 is 63 of the most common metadata types you're likely to be using in day-to-day work. But of course, you know what work you're doing better than we will. So we're able to manage the custom filters, come in here and build quite a granular filter to pull down exactly the information that you're interested in seeing. The better or the more refined this can be, the better your experience with Gearset. It speeds up the process because we're kind of waiting on the Salesforce APIs to recall that information. And it also reduces background noise. You can see the changes that you're actually interested in much quicker. As you can see, we also have support for velocity as well as managed packages. You can choose specific namespace as well and pull them down and treat them exactly the same as you would any other metadata types. You can save these filters and share within the team. Once you've selected your metadata filter, you then hit compare, and it will compare the two environments. So as you can see here, what we're doing, we're logging into both the source and the target. We're downloading the metadata, looking for just the metadata types you told us to, using Salesforce's metadata API. We then cache that retrieved information, and then Gearset's IP compares the two environments to show you what's different. How do these look different from one environment to the other? And then allows you to quite visually build a package to then deploy from source to target.
Can I compare or deploy from different types of, because you have this Salesforce org, you have Scratch org, you have version control and local files. Can I, from different type to different type, deploy changes?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So it doesn't have to be org to org, source control, source control. It can be any combination that you can, source control or Scratch org, kind of whatever. Yeah, any source to any other environment.
Okay, thanks.
Gearset just treats it the same and again presents it the same way. Any other questions before I explore the screen?
No.
Wonderful. So this here is the comparison grid. So again, this is probably where you would spend the majority of your time, and this is where a lot of the building of a package happens at the earlier stages of a development process. Further down the line, you probably have these packages already. Admin and developer 1, 2, and 3 have already made those changes. You as a release manager, for example, could take those changes, that entire package, and then deploy elsewhere with a few clicks. But at this stage, this is where I'm building a package of these specific changes that I want to send from my demo environment to my next environment. Again, whether that is a feature branch, whether it's an integration environment or a staging environment, doesn't necessarily matter. The process looks and feels the same. First type is all items. That's everything that exists within these two orgs under them 8 metadata types I've had, whether they're new, changed, deleted. As we move along, we can see I've got some new items in there, some changed items, some deleted. So Gearset supports destructive changes, and select is what I'm going to select as I build this package through. There's a few things within each individual component that I'm able to see. So an example here is I've got a new item, I've got discount percentage, I want to deploy that. I've made this custom field and I want to get that from my dev environment to my staging. If I expand the chevron, we're able to see any of its dependencies and where it sits within the kind of hierarchy of whether it's got anything used by it or whether it depends upon something else. Discount percentage depends upon discount rate. So it makes sense. If I expanded these, I've seen that makes sense. I'm going to include that as part of my deployment. I'm going to pretend I forgot that though, because essentially Gearset has some proprietary problem analyzers that picks up on things like this and offers you a quick fix. It notifies you of things like missing dependencies. So we'll come to that one later. Also within the chevrons, you're able to see profiles and permissions. So example here is sales demo field, it's a custom field. I may only want to deploy that for the admin profile and the marketing profile, for example. I can quite granularly drill down and deploy exactly what I want to deploy on the FLS level. This is a common gripe with customers who come to us who are solely using change sets. They find it quite difficult, and quite often people will manually do this as a post-deployment step, which of course is time, takes up quite a lot of time, but also it's, I guess, not as reliable. You're kind of hoping a human gets it right twice, which of course they can, but it's better to be able to kind of deploy that across all as one go. We'll select those for this deployment. Just running down again, we'll try and present things in the easiest way to see. So I've got a changed item here. It's probably a good example. We've got a count SLA. It's a custom field. If I open that up, you can see in the bottom here we have this diff viewer. So I can always see it as the XML, present it as an object view as well. If there's a nicer way to present it though, we will, just to make the tool as friendly and easy to use. So we can see here's a pick list and we've presented it as such. Yes, those are the changes I want to include. Tick the box. And that will then again fall under selected items to be pulled forward. Do you guys work quite often with Apex?
Config before code principle, obviously, but you can't avoid it most of the time.
Okay, and do you typically see yourselves or clients using static code analysis with their Apex?
In almost all cases where there's code involved. I wouldn't have thought, at least from a CTA perspective, you would need to at least reflect that you're protecting the quality of the code through automated checks and so on. Don't know what the rest of the group thinks.
I guess with those, would you have a system whereby if certain errors or warnings were hit, you would, I guess, stop in the development process? You wouldn't go any further up the development pipeline? Or is it not usually that stringent? It's more like a nice to see, or is it an indeed, we need to stop this, we need to sort this out?
I mean, the sort of scenarios that we get tend to not specify to that level of detail, whether what the sort of operational rules are. They tend to say we need to maximize the quality before it gets into production, or we want to prevent the number of production issues that we see, or the number of issues that are raised having already thought having been fixed previously, so that come back into production. So they're almost implied quality issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's left open for the candidate to sort of figure out, okay, how do I describe a solution that's going to solve that problem? Obviously, static code analysis is just one of them.
No, absolutely. I guess to build on that, or I guess showcase, it makes sense to possibly pull through a couple of Apex classes. I'll just pull through the one now. I'll pull through custom site register controller. You can see we rendered it. You can see the Apex class there. I'll pull it through, and actually we got PMD within Gearset. At this stage, it will just present any errors to you. With the automation suite, when you build up a CI/CD process, you're able to fail a job, or at least not allow it to be deployed, should I say, if there's any errors or warnings from your static code analysis. In reality, I don't know how often that's used, because it can be quite tricky to really have none, I guess. But again, that's at the discretion, I guess, of the customer and the individuals. Again, building to what you said there, Sam. Final tab there, we have some deletions. So these exist within my source, but not my target. So there may not always be an actual true deletion. I might have a lighter weight dev environment, for example, but Gearset won't obviously know that. So we'll present this with you, say this looks like it's deleted, it doesn't exist in the target, and give you the option to include that deletion as part of your deployment. Again, with automations, you would likely have this turned off. You could have it turned on if you want. We can automatically deploy deletions. We don't always recommend that. We like deletions to be a manual process, but I've got a legacy checkbox. I don't want it anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. Finally, select items. That's just everything I've clicked as I've built this package. There are a few other options before I hit next and proceed to the problem analyzers that I mentioned before. If there's something missing there, I thought there should be something else. Refresh the comparison. Just a great way. You don't have to go back to the beginning, keep all the progress you've already made, just pull through a different metadata type, hit refresh, and that will pull it through. You can save the draft deployment. So Gearset's quite a good team collaboration tool. There's many different ways we can collaborate. One here at this stage is be able to save this draft deployment. It would live up here in draft deployments, and you can share that and work on it with other colleagues. Export you got thus far, or we can just hit next to start the problem analysis. Before I do though, any other questions on this screen and this stage? Take silences now. So we hit next. Gearset runs, I think we have around 70 problem analyzers that run over your deployment. So across our entire customer base, I believe our deployment success rate number, is 92%, and that is across those 1,500 plus customers that we have. So a lot of that is down to these problem analyzers. We're just very good at knowing what's going to cause a success and what's going to cause a failure, and then letting you know. Example here is the problem we found. Some items reference components that aren't in the target. The solution in this case is to add those missing components. And we offer you a tick box there. You can ignore this and proceed anyway, but we're basically saying there's probably a problem here. You'd probably be much better if you tick this box, included this item. Warnings could be similar. Things that look a bit unusual, we'll just pull them up as a warning. We're not offering a fix, just wanting to make you aware of it. Code quality. So I did bring that Apex class in. I had a hard-coded ID in there. Field name doesn't follow a specific convention, just letting me know. So at this stage, it's not stopping me. Of course, if I had a process where this would stop me, then it would. But for me, it's more of a nice to know, and I can still proceed regardless. So it's knowing that you have customization over your PMD rule set. You're able to create your own. You're able to edit them, increase the severity of certain thresholds, for example, and save that as a team rule set to share across all end users. Hitting next just takes you to a summary. So if there was no issues at all, you come straight to the screen. And this is where you do a bit of housekeeping, I guess. So we'll give the deployment a friendly name, deployment March 28th, or any kind of naming convention that you have. Give it some notes. Again, we've made this a required field to enforce good habits. It doesn't have to be. I'm going to attach it to a Jira ticket. So I've got Joe's sales project, JSP1. It's in to do. It's now in progress. And I can update that from the Gearset UI. Again, we can force end users to do this just to ensure you have good housekeeping and a good audit trail of who's doing what, where, and when. Couple of options now. I can validate the deployment. I can deploy now. I can specify what tests I want to run. I'm going to go ahead and validate that deployment. Will that go through successfully? When validation comes back successful, I can then use Salesforce's quick deploy just to send that package from A to B. Schedule it later in the day if I so wish and get notified on Slack. I'm going to go ahead and just deploy those changes from my dev environment to my staging environment. Any questions on the process there of comparing two environments, regardless of what they are, seeing the difference between the two, selecting what you want to send across, and then let Gearset ensure that package is going to go through successfully, and then sending it across? Any questions?
I guess that works for back propagation as well. Like if you've sort of got parallel streams of work or whatever, you can also use it the same way, right?
Absolutely can. There's multiple ways of doing that, depending on what your multiple streams are doing and what you're trying to get from where. You could do it in any scenario. So yes, you could do it the way around. You could compare from a staging environment down to lower dev environments and push the changes. But if you already know what you wanted to kind of back propagate, there's probably quicker ways of doing that, because this unit of work that I just deployed now exists within Gearset's deployment history. So this tab is super useful as a very rich history. First off, it's a nice audit chart to see who's doing what in your Salesforce environment. But it's also good to know that every single deployment, every single comparison is cached, and you can see it at a later state. So this is the deployment I just did now. I can jump in, I can view the details. That'll just take me back to that summary screen. I can view the comparison. So at any point in time, I can go back and see, what did this person actually see? What were they working from at the point they made that deployment? There's a report. Again, just a who, what, where, when. This will always exist. Associated Jira tickets and so on and so forth. We can roll back. So maybe the entirety of that I need to roll back, or maybe just one component of that I need to roll back. We're able to do that from within here. But deploy to target would probably be the quickest way for you to achieve that, Sam, whereby I click deploy to target. Where do I want to send that to? I want to send that to CI dev, a different dev environment. Just hit deploy now, and it will just send it right through.
With the rollback, is that doing destructive changes, or is
Can
it
do.
sort of deploying from a previous state? Is it redeploying from a previous state sort of thing?
Yes. So essentially, that first initial cache that we took when we took staging environment before we did the deployment, we're comparing that to what it is now. So just very quickly, if I click rollback, it'll demonstrate what we're doing. So the snapshot is what we took at the beginning of that deployment, comparing it to what it looks like now. So everything that was new is now deleted, everything that was deleted is now new, and everything that's changed, it just looks on the other side.
Yeah, okay.
So it's actually another kind of compare and deploy, just flipped. And you have
Just
complete control.
Yeah, it's the other way. Right. Yep.
Exactly. Again, final thing to mention here, the ability to clone packages. You can change the source and the target. So deploy to target is a cached version that we're going to send elsewhere. Clone package means we'll take the change you've made, we'll rerun the comparison on two new environments. They could be the same if you so wish, already pre-selecting the changes that you've previously selected. And you can combine them too. So I've been working on a couple of things, perhaps I can combine those packages if I wish, compare the played to different environments, already have that comparison built up, and then send through to save a lot of time. Everything I showed thus far is without using source control. So a lot of people that come to us, they quite often do want a source-driven way of working, and we absolutely can fulfill that. It's not always the recommendation that is the best place to go to straight away. It just fundamentally depends on many factors. And I guess our line really is just add complexity when you need to. Maybe you do need to straight away, but maybe actually just working like this is going to solve all the issues that you thought source control could anyway, in a much friendlier, simpler way. However, if you do need to bring in source control, you want to bring in automations, really make a fully scalable development process, then we absolutely can do so. I'm just thinking now, what would be useful for the group? So I've kind of showed you, I guess, how you would use Gearset day to day. I've not necessarily looked into how you would build a specific automated workflow. Is that useful for this call, or is that something potentially to follow up with, or just kind of not relevant at the moment? I also don't know what time this call is running till.
I think we can run it until Melissa just said you can end it whenever you're done. But maybe another 9-ish minutes so that we just take the full 45. Or, I mean, if you want to go on longer as well. Sam, I don't know if you have a time limit.
I've got, I mean, probably it's what, 10 to 6 here. I've got, usual commitments
Got a life
to get
outside
on
of
with.
work.
Yeah. So I'll probably knock off at 6, but everybody else has probably got other things too.
I think I could probably just whistle through 3 things as opposed to actually setting up an automated. So I've pulled up a PDF of workflows that we can develop. So one of the key things I mentioned, that was the first thing I did around how Gearset goes to solve the DevOps problem, is around flexibility, which we see as a massive plus. Some people may prefer to just be told how to work. we can do that too. But just being told how to work, you might miss more than you hit in terms of the best way to truly do so. So when it comes to integrating with source control, we can absolutely have it as a source or a target in any deployment. And the beauty of source control, there's many, but I guess one of them is the ability of Gearset to notice when something hits a particular branch and then fire off an automated deployment. So an example here would be where we'd possibly recommend somebody who's keen and interested to have a source-driven DevOps workflow. I'll just walk through it quite quickly. I'm not necessarily going to show you what it looks like in Gearset, although the reality is you've just seen it. We have a main branch. You then create a feature branch, as I showed you within Gearset. You can then deploy to your dev environment to refresh that dev environment. You don't have to do that. They might be naturally in sync anyway, but it's always good to do that kind of on a regular cadence. You then make your changes as you usually would in your dev environment or whatever environment you like to make your changes in, making frequent commits. We don't call them deployments. The terminology is slightly different, but the process is the same. A commit is just deploying from a dev environment to that feature branch through Gearset. Then in the process, you then create a pull request targeting the next branch. So again, this is from the Gearset UI. I'm just gonna say, I want to create a pull request of that feature branch that I've created. I want to target the main branch. And that could be my job done. I just make my changes. I just point that somewhere else, and then a release manager or somebody further up down the development pipeline picks up that unit of work. That's when you do your code review. So again, Sam, when we're kind of talking around how you put in these stage gates, there's many ways we're able to do this on the Gearset side and the source control side, as well as also on sometimes the Jira side as well, just to ensure these processes are adhered to, but also like there's no way around them. But fundamentally, what happened here, you have a code review, somebody merges that change, it's been accepted, then Gearset can detect this and do automated jobs. So an automated job in Gearset is exactly as you just saw, but we'll pre-select everything that's new, everything that's changed, and if you want us to, everything that's deleted, and it would deploy it up. So this example, I've added my my sales demo field, I've added my discount percentage, I've changed that pick list, deployed to my feature branch, create a pull request. As soon as that merge hits, it's deployed them automatically up to my QA, UAT environment. And it's also automatically validated against production. So I know even before I start my QA, my user acceptance testing, has that gone through as a validated package? Is it likely to go any further? No, it's not. Send it back. Yes, it is. I can continue.
Joe, there's a few questions as well from Dan.
Oh, sorry, I've missed those.
That's all right. He's wondering about incremental unit tests, the reports, and also whether we integrate with other code analysis tools. He listed checkmarks, Chimera, I think that's how you pronounce it, and also on CI notifications via Slack, which I believe we do those, but I'll let you confirm.
Yeah, I'll try to cover those. So yeah, CI notifications from Slack. So any notification you get from Gearset, you can also get through to Slack. That's the major use case. I'd always recommend that over email. It gets more eyes on it. Integrations with other static code analysis tools, not out of the box. So any one of these jobs, so when this job fires off, we're also able to fire off an outgoing webhook. So yes, in that regard, in terms of if the static code analysis tool accepts incoming webhooks, you can customize those to kick that off, then yes, but no, not in the sense of it's built within the Gearset UI. Sorry,
I think we used it with the webhooks to post on Google Chat. I think it was. So I think it worked there as well. So there's probably a few others.
Nice. I mean, I guess
webhooks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, webhooks can usually mean you can build quite a good downstream process. I guess the limitation there is we don't accept it coming back. So in your example, if you send that package to a static code analysis tool and then something failed, Gearset wouldn't necessarily know. But again, there is ways to build those feedback loops. It just might take a bit more on your side. We do have a public API though that's resolving this, and it's now actually in pilot that anyone can access in the app. So if we go here into my account, we have quite a few pilot features. We want to get them in front of end users as quickly as possible, and you can toggle these off in the when anyone's in the app at any point. But yeah, with the algorithm webhooks, you can actually build quite useful downstream applications. And sorry, Martina, what was the first two questions?
The last one was incremental unit test reports, code coverage, pass rate. How does that work?
Yes, absolutely. So under Automation Suite, there's a few things. There's change monitoring, which is extraordinarily useful. You can set this up on as many orgs as you want, and they'll just compare themselves to themselves every day and let you know what's changed you'll then have that unit of work to do with what you wish. So an obvious use case there usually is put it on production, sees what happens to your metadata every single day. Somebody's going to make a hot fix. Let's just down propagate that by deploy to target, or roll back if something's gone wrong. But absolutely, unit testing, you can add a new job, set this up on any environment you so wish, choose a time of day, set what your minimum code coverage is for yourself. You can set your own thresholds. You can specify what tests if you want and break up the job into multiple ones. And again, you can have this sent out into Slack of how you want to be notified. Come in here, I have a little dashboard. These are some of my teammates. I don't really care about what's going on in mine. 77% code coverage is okay. I've set my threshold at 80 just to be on the safe side. So my coverage is low. We can jump in, we can view the history, and you can see how it changed over time. Mine's somewhat boring, but this is how it would look. You can also jump in and view the results of those unit tests. Is that, I guess, enough to answer the questions, Dan?
Yeah, sorry. I cannot unmute myself, but thank you. That was great.
That's absolutely fine. We've got literally 2 minutes left. Is there any other, I guess, quick fire questions before we finish for the day?
Can you share the slides?
I can indeed share the slides. Yes, that's fine.
I always like to ask a challenging question. Might be challenging, might not be challenging, but there might also be an opportunity to sell a bit. But so there's loads of tools out there, right? And some of us may have seen more or less than others. What makes Gearset unique? Because to a degree, a lot of them are much of a muchness, and they all provide very similar capabilities. Obviously, they have a different, way of configuring it, or different connectors and things like that. So what makes Gearset specifically unique and sort of stand out amongst the crowd?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I guess first off, my expertise is with Gearset. I've never used another tool, so your knowledge of all the other tools will be greater than my own. They just will. From my understanding, I think fundamentally the first one that's mostly obvious with most of the kind of, I guess, major competitors would be we're non-native to Salesforce. We're not a managed package. We're not nothing to install. We're completely separate on a web app, which is a very, very conscious decision. It means we control, as mentioned, our UI. We're not bound by any limitations of what we make the web app look like. It also means we're able to be quite scalable as your org gets bigger and bigger. The limitation is the Salesforce APIs, but there's very little else that we don't have control over. Another major benefit is the ability to essentially practice what we preach in terms of DevOps. So Gearset updates the app, I think it's an average 2 to 3 times every single day. You can see those 2 today, 1 there, 1 over on Friday, with small incremental changes to no change to the end user. So I'm sure every other tool are constantly updating the tool, making it better, but that means you might have to go for down maintenance, you might have to update it yourself, and so on and so forth. We can get changes in the hands of the customer very quickly. Beyond that, because I guess everyone is trying to do the same thing, and as you said, in a slightly different way, I think the true differentiator is our support. So I mentioned on the slide deck, our support is based in-house, and that team are awesome. Like, they're so good to work with, and if you speak to any customers at Gearset who have worked with them, their praise is really quite glowing. And I think it's just nothing better. If I was stuck here, I didn't know what was going on. It's just nothing better than opening up a chat and speaking to a real human who will happily jump on a screen share and help you out. And I think any interaction you have with anyone at Gearset will be kind of similar. I think that's probably the biggest differentiator that I would personally say. But again, I'm not an end user, and I've not worked with them with all the other tools either. Beyond that, I think all-in-one, I think some of the other ones may claim to do similar, but I think quite a lot are just release management, whereas Gearset, of course, has the backup as well, which is a major use case that we see more and more commonly. I guess that was a very roundabout pitch that I wasn't really prepared for. But
Told you it'd be challenging.
hopefully
fair
that
enough.
kind of covered some, I guess, positioning points that we have. I guess fundamentally the positioning points that we would go on about are these ones here. It's a flexible tool. It's non-native. We have awesome support and we give you everything in a single tool. And that's and it's specific to Salesforce. That's just what we're trying to do as a business. And we're not really too focused on what other people are doing. We just want to get it right. And our customers stay around for a long time. So we're obviously doing something well.
Yeah, because I think there's other tools out there. Azure DevOps is, obviously probably the closest, I would say, between Azure DevOps and Capado. I'd probably say they're the closest, but each one of those has, Gearset seems to have something that either one of those doesn't. So, for example, the backup side of things included in it, obviously, is in Gearset, but it's not in ADO, right? You've got the Capado release management and change management side of things, but it doesn't have the backup as well covered. Own Backup obviously does it, but doesn't have the release management. There's sort of, you look at these Jenkins, Bamboo, release management, on-premise implementation or in the cloud if you're going to host it yourself, but it's not Gearset. It's not that all-in-one, like you say, that's Salesforce specific at the same time. So that's at least what I've seen. But it's horses for courses. Whatever the scenario warrants, you still got to evaluate them all again.
No, you absolutely do, and most people will do. Like most people I speak to, it only takes Google you Google Gearset Verse, and you kind of see, right? Even if you've not heard of them. So absolutely, which is why I hear snippets from people, and I guess the bias is I probably speak to more people who like Gearset because they're more likely to want to speak to us. But you're absolutely right. There probably is different tooling for different scenarios because not everyone's situation is exactly the same. Anything else before we sign off? It's also the evening for me. I'm also UK based, so I'll happily cycle home in the light for the first time this year. Because of the sun, not because Gearset makes me work late every day.
Not from me. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, it's lovely to meet you all. And yeah, let us know if you want anything else. Do you have any other questions?
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or evening. And yeah, let us know if we can do anything to help. We'll share the slides with Melissa so she can distribute to everyone.
Okay, bye.
Great, thanks.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.